Music, there's a moment you've probably lived through without ever naming it. You're standing near a door, sitting at a table, checking your phone for the third time in 10 minutes, and the person you were supposed to meet still isn't there. At first, you tell yourself something small. They're probably on the way. Then something quieter slips in. They're late again. Maybe you sigh. Maybe you smile because you're used to it. Or maybe something tightens in your chest, just a little, because lateness is strange like that. It feels personal even when no one means it to be. It feels small on the surface, almost harmless, until it repeats. And once it repeats, it stops being about minutes. Everyone knows someone who's always late. And if we're honest, some of us are that person. But here's the part most people never talk about. Lateness isn't really about time. Not at its core. It's about psychology. It's about emotion. It's about how someone experiences pressure, expectation, and transition. Because patterns don't appear randomly. Something builds them. People who are chronically late aren't moving through time the way others do. Some people live like they're racing a countdown. Others move as if time is a wide river that will always keep flowing. And then there are those in between, where time feels both urgent and overwhelming at the same time. Those are often the people who arrive late, again and again, not because they want to, not because they don't care, but because their internal clock doesn't tick the same way. Most people who are always late are fighting a quiet internal battle, a battle with pressure, with avoidance, with hope, with fear, with the need for just a little more space before facing what comes next. Imagine what their morning feels like. They wake up believing they have more time than they do, not because they're careless, but because their mind estimates time based on intention instead of reality. I'll finish this quickly. I can do one more thing. This won't take long. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional miscalculation. It's when time is measured by what someone wishes will happen, not by what usually does. It's like planning a journey assuming no traffic, no interruptions, no delays. A perfect scenario that almost never arrives. This isn't irresponsibility. It's optimism. And optimism can be beautiful. But when it comes to time, it often becomes a trap. Another layer sits underneath this. Many people who are habitually late struggle with transitions. Ending one thing, starting another, leaving a space, entering a new one. Each shift costs them emotional energy. For some people, that cost is small. For others, it's heavy. Imagine living a day where every transition feels like a negotiation. Getting out of bed, leaving the house, ending a conversation, starting a task. Those seconds of hesitation add up. They turn into minutes, then 10 minutes, then 20, and suddenly they're late again. When they say, "I didn't mean to be late," they're usually telling the truth. But lateness still carries weight. It feels like a broken promise to the person waiting, even when the intention was good. What's often misunderstood is this. Lateness usually comes from the opposite of disrespect. It comes from pressure, from overcommitment, from fear of disappointing others, from trying to do too much in too little time. Some people who are always late are perfectionists. They adjust one last detail, fix one more thing. They want to show up prepared and present. That extra care costs them minutes, and those minutes cost them punctuality. Others are emotional avoiders. If something feels heavy, they delay. If something feels overwhelming, they slow down. Not consciously, not deliberately. It's a quiet form of self-protection. Then there are dreamers, people whose inner world is louder than the clock. They lose track of time because their thoughts pull them inward. They don't forget time because they don't value it. They forget because they're absorbed. And then there are those who are simply overloaded. Too many responsibilities, too many expectations, too many roles to hold at once. Their lateness isn't laziness. It's exhaustion leaking into the schedule. If you ever watch someone rush out the door, apologizing, promising to do better, you might notice something in their eyes. Guilt and fatigue. They're trying, but time keeps slipping. For some, lateness is learned. They grew up in homes where routines were loose, where time was flexible, where clocks were suggestions. As adults, They carry that rhythm forward. For others, lateness becomes quiet rebellion, not loud defiance, but a soft reclaiming of control after growing up overly monitored or pressured. Dragging time becomes a whisper of autonomy. And for some, lateness is tied to self-worth. They underestimate how long things take because they overestimate how much they can handle. They want to do everything well. They want to be enough. And that desire stretches time until it breaks. Here's something many people don't realize. People who are always late often care deeply. They show up emotionally. They remember important moments. They stay when others leave. Their punctuality doesn't reflect their loyalty. It reflects their internal rhythm. But time doesn't see intention. It sees behavior. And that's where the pain forms, on both sides. Many chronically late people live in a cycle. Hope, underestimation, rush, regret, repeat. Behind every apology is quiet self-criticism, embarrassment, the feeling of always being behind. And yet, they genuinely believe they can change. Every time. Because optimism keeps them trying. What most people don't talk about is why lateness feels emotional. Time is one of the most intimate gifts we give. When it feels uneven, something feels off. Not betrayal, just misalignment. Lateness is rarely about not caring. It's about a nervous system trying to manage life. Some people experience life in steady steps. Others experience it in waves. People who are always late often live in waves. Intensity, calm, overwhelm, escape. Their timing follows emotion, not the clock. That's why telling someone to just set an alarm earlier rarely works. The issue isn't the alarm. It's the internal landscape. For some, being early feels uncomfortable, awkward, like wasted space. They try to time things perfectly, but perfection collapses under pressure. Others don't experience minutes as units. They experience moments. Time disappears when they're absorbed. And some are late because their lives are built around survival, not structure. A mind under constant pressure loses its sense of time. Fear plays a role too. Fear of judgment, fear of starting, fear of being seen, fear of disappointing others. Lateness becomes a buffer, a shield, a few extra moments before stepping into something demanding. And beneath all of this, there are often beautiful qualities: creativity, empathy, depth, presence. Time slips because they're immersed in experience. But lateness isn't harmless. And most people who struggle with it know that. It's stressful. It's exhausting. It creates tension with people they care about. And here's a pattern many notice once they look closely. They're rarely late to things that feel safe or relieving. They're late to things that carry emotional weight. Pressure stretches time. Many also overestimate their future selves. They believe tomorrow will have more energy, more clarity, more time. Tomorrow arrives, and nothing changed, but awareness changes things. When someone realizes their lateness isn't about failure, but about emotional patterns, compassion enters. And compassion creates understanding. Understanding creates change. Instead of, why can't I fix this? They ask, what happens inside me before time slips? They begin planning with honesty instead of hope, preparing earlier, not from fear, but care for their future self. They work with their nature, not against it. And slowly, the rush softens. They arrive on time for things that matter. Not perfectly, but differently, because the goal was never punctuality. The goal was self-awareness. Understanding your relationship with time means understanding your fears, your pressure points, your emotional rhythms. And one day, quietly, something shifts. They're no longer always catching up. They're no longer apologizing for existing at their pace. They move with time instead of chasing it. Because lateness was never just about minutes. It was about being human in a world that moves fast. And once someone understands that, even time begins to feel different. Side by side, step by step, moment by moment, music